She ran, each step chased by the sound of something closing in, like a countdown echoing through the dark. The figure with the scythe whispered that the game was over, the weapon gleaming in the shadows, ready to strike. Panic clawed at her lungs, her body trembling as the end neared. Then, in a flash, the attack froze midair. A man stood before her, tall and unyielding, muscles tense as steel, his eyes burning with light. No one knew where he came from, but his presence shifted the night. The masked figure now faced a challenger who would not break. My name is Julia, and I thought sneaking into the abandoned amusement park outside Denver would be nothing more than a dare. The rides had stood silent for decades, their metal frames rusting under the weight of weeds. The Ferris wheel loomed over the parking lot, its cars swaying though there was no wind. I adjusted my glasses, trying to laugh it off as I followed the cracked pavement toward the carousel. The horses were chipped and hollow-eyed, frozen mid-gallop, as if they knew something I didn't. The silence around them pressed so heavy it drowned out even my own footsteps. I stopped when the air shifted. A figure drifted between the roller coaster tracks, its shape blurring like smoke pulled into the outline of a man. His face was smooth and blank, eyes as black as tar, fixed only on me. Each step left frost across the broken pavement, and the lights of the Ferris wheel flickered even though no power ran through the park. My chest tightened as I backed away, but the figure glided closer, moving faster than my eyes could follow. I turned to run, but the exit I had used was gone. The park had changed, warping into something darker, and the ground tilted as though time itself snapped loose. When I caught my breath, the park was no longer abandoned. The ride stood new, glowing with lanterns instead of neon. Crowds in old-fashioned clothes filled the midway, their voices sharp with panic as they fled the faceless ghost towering above the Ferris wheel. I stumbled, realizing I had fallen into the year 1910. The night a fire had once swept through this very park. The heat of flames brushed my skin even though the air remained frozen. I tried to scream, but the smoke choked my throat. The ghost bent toward me, its hollow gaze stretching wider, reaching with arms too long to be human. Before it reached me, a man stepped forward from the burning smoke. He was tall, his armor black and patterned with strange markings that glowed faint blue. A shield larger than my body shimmered in his hands, and his white eyes glared steady into the ghost's abyss. The impact of their clash rattled the ground, light sparking against the dark as the villagers scattered in terror. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears against the roar of battle. A boy no older than 16 grabbed my arm, begging me to follow him to safety. His name was Thomas, and he pulled with such desperation that I obeyed. We ducked beneath a wooden booth as the armored man fought, his strikes carving streaks of light across the smoke. Thomas whispered about the fire, about how the park had become cursed after that night. His words blurred in my ears, drowned out by the shriek of the ghost splitting through the sky. I peeked out just in time to see the spirit scatter into fragments of black dust, though its presence lingered like a promise. The park fell quiet, but my body shook with the weight of what had happened. Even as the smoke cleared and the boy's grip steadied me, I knew this was not over. That ghost would not stop, not in this time or the next. I thought everything ended that night in the abandoned park, but it never really left me. Days later, walking through campus, the air still carried that same chill, like a reminder pressed against the back of my neck. My friends joked about how pale I looked, but how could I explain the way shadows seemed to bend around me? I forced a laugh, pushed my glasses up, told myself nothing had followed me. By evening, I tried to study in the library, though my mind stayed restless. The shelves stretched high, the smell of dust lingering, the kind of place that should have felt safe. A girl named Emily sat across from me, tapping her pen against her notebook. She smiled faintly before burying her head in her notes. At another table, Mark leaned back with headphones, completely absorbed. Normal people, normal lives, I told myself, but the silence between turning pages sounded too sharp. The first sign was the flicker of the old chandelier overhead. Not unusual, just bad wiring maybe, except the glow dimmed and stayed dim until the corners of the room fell into a gray blur. My stomach twisted. I closed my book and pretended to stretch, though my eyes scanned for an exit. Emily glanced up, confused by my stiffness. That was when the cold arrived, rolling over us like unseen fog. At the far end of the aisle, between two shelves, the figure reappeared. The same faceless man, taller this time, his body stretched in ways that made my skin crawl. The pages of open books fluttered, though no air moved. Emily froze, clutching her pen, while Mark pulled off his headphones, finally aware. The faceless shadow lifted an arm, the motion so slow it felt like time thickened around us. I backed away, but the ground shifted. My foot struck the floor, yet it gave way, as though I had stepped onto water. In a blink, the library around me melted into stone walls and high windows stained with colors that shimmered under torchlight. The air carried incense, heavy and sharp. I was standing in an old cathedral, long before the age I knew. Emily was beside me, gasping, her hand reaching for mine. Mark stumbled behind, swearing softly, utterly lost. None of us had asked to be here. The faceless figure had crossed time with us. It stood beneath the altar, taller than before, arms stretched wide as if claiming the whole place. Shadows pooled at its feet, crawling along the floor toward us. My knees weakened, my chest tight with the weight of its presence. Just when it reached forward, light clashed against the dark. The armored man appeared again, shield raised, eyes burning like white fire. The ground quaked as their forces collided, sparks cascading down the stained glass. Emily screamed but clung tighter to me, while Mark pulled us toward the side corridor. We hid behind a pillar, though every strike rattled the stone as if the building itself would crumble. My mind spun. Who was that man, and why did he keep appearing whenever I was cornered? His movements were precise, steady, as though he had done this for centuries. He held the faceless being back, though each impact drained him more. I tried to stay quiet, but fear made my breath ragged. Emily whispered that maybe he was here for me, not for any of us. Her words cut deep because I felt it too. The ghost never looked at her, never at Mark, only me. That stare without eyes pulled me closer no matter how far I tried to run. The fight dragged on until the faceless form cracked, spilling into fragments of ash that floated before vanishing. The cathedral stilled, though the silence was unbearable. The armored man lowered his shield, his chest rising heavy with each breath. For a moment he looked toward me, as if waiting. But before I could move, before I could even speak, the ground shifted again. This time I landed hard on a cobblestone street, the night filled with lanterns and narrow houses leaning over like they wanted to whisper secrets. Emily and Mark appeared beside me, shaken but alive. My knees burned from the fall, yet relief never came. I knew the ghost would follow. It always did. I stood there with the others, staring into the dark end of the street, and felt the weight of a truth I didn't want. No place in time would be safe for me again. I kept telling myself that once we left the cathedral, things would calm down. Maybe the street with lanterns meant safety, or at least a place where people lived. My shoes scraped against the stones, the air smelled faintly of roasted chestnuts, and for a second I let myself imagine it was just an old European town. Emily leaned close, whispering questions I couldn't answer, while Mark scanned every shadow as if expecting them to move. I tried to sound steady, but my pulse betrayed me. A group of townsfolk appeared at the end of the street. 2 women carried baskets of bread, their faces calm as though nothing unusual had happened. A young man walked behind them, adjusting his coat, offering a polite nod when his eyes met mine. That simple gesture should have been reassuring. Instead, it unsettled me. His gaze lingered too long, like he knew something about me that I didn't. Emily noticed it too, clutching my sleeve tighter. We followed the crowd into a square where a fountain stood at the center, its water glowing under the lantern light. The sound was soothing, almost hypnotic. Mark muttered that it felt staged, like walking into a painting. I wanted to disagree, but the thought had crossed my mind already. Every stone, every ripple seemed too precise, as if someone had set it up for us. The man with the coat stepped closer. He introduced himself as Adrian, his voice calm and low. He asked where we came from, though not in a curious way. More like he already knew the answer and wanted to see if we would admit it. His eyes carried the same strange light I had seen in the armored figure. Not blinding, but enough to unsettle me. Emily whispered that we shouldn't trust him. Mark, though, looked oddly convinced that Adrian could help. We let him lead us down another street, narrower, darker. The lanterns here flickered, and the air cooled. Adrian spoke of passages, hidden paths through time, as if they were common knowledge. He said travelers often lost themselves if they resisted the shift. His words felt rehearsed, but the way he walked, steady and confident, made it difficult not to follow. I wanted to ask about the faceless being, about the armored man, but my throat stayed dry. Halfway down the street, the sound returned, that low hum, the one that had chased me since the first night. Emily stumbled as if the ground itself vibrated. Mark cursed under his breath. Adrian stopped, his shoulders stiff, his calm expression finally breaking. He turned and told us to stay close. The air bent, twisting the lantern flames into spirals. Out of the dark, the faceless figure emerged again, taller than ever, its arms reaching outward like shadows stretching across the walls. My chest tightened, and I wanted to run, but my feet locked to the ground. Adrian stepped forward, his coat lifting in the sudden gust. His voice dropped into a tone I barely recognized, commanding yet weary, like someone who had done this too many times. The faceless one stopped, tilting its head as though studying him. Adrian raised his hand, and the space around us warped, like glass under pressure. Emily clutched me tighter, whispering prayers she never believed in before. The creature lunged, but the street dissolved. I was thrown backward, weightless, tumbling through darkness. My hands grasped at nothing, my body spinning until the ground returned beneath me. This time it was grass, damp and cold, stretching under moonlight. I lay there gasping, Emily beside me, Mark groaning nearby. Adrian stood a few feet away, steady as ever, though his face now showed exhaustion. He said this place was older, quieter, but not safe. His eyes caught mine, and for a moment I thought he might vanish like the armored man before him. The field around us stretched toward a forest. The trees moved as though breathing, their branches curling in unnatural rhythm. I wanted to believe they were just trees, but deep inside I knew they were watching. Emily refused to step forward, tears streaking down her face. Mark tried to stay brave, though his voice trembled when he said we had no choice. Adrian simply waited, patient, letting us decide. The silence pressed harder than the darkness itself. I forced myself to stand, brushing dirt from my clothes. My legs shook, but I walked first. Each step carried the weight of choices I never asked for. The forest called us in, its shadows deep and endless, and I knew that whatever waited there was only the beginning. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part wanted to cry. Instead, I kept moving, because stopping meant letting the faceless shadow catch me again. By the time the trees swallowed us, the air grew colder. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing like footsteps behind me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I already knew it would follow. When I woke, the forest was still around me. The trees swayed, though no wind touched my skin. For a moment I thought maybe I had dreamed everything, but Emily's hand clutching mine told me it had been real. Mark was already up, pacing, his eyes sharp and restless. Adrian stood a little farther, quiet, as if waiting for something I couldn't see. I wanted to believe that if I ignored the strangeness, it would fade. I tried to focus on the damp soil beneath my shoes, the cool air brushing my face, even the faint scent of moss. Normal things, safe things. But every sound carried a strange rhythm, like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I could feel it in my chest, heavy, dragging each breath. We walked toward the tree line, the forest swallowing the field behind us. Branches hung low, curling in unnatural arcs, their tips almost brushing my shoulders. Emily whispered that she thought the trees leaned closer when we passed. I laughed, but the sound came out flat. She wasn't wrong. I had noticed it too. Adrian finally spoke, his voice even, telling us not to look back. Mark muttered that it was ridiculous, but I saw how tightly he clenched his fists. None of us wanted to admit the truth. We were being guided or herded deeper inside. I watched Adrian's back as he led us. Every step he took seemed sure, like he had walked this path before. Yet his silence made it worse. I wanted answers, even lies, but he gave us nothing. The deeper we went, the darker it became. No lanterns, no moonlight slipping through. Only a dim glow that seemed to come from the bark itself, a pale shimmer tracing faint patterns. They looked like symbols, carved long before us, yet somehow alive. Emily touched one and gasped, pulling her hand back as though burned. Adrian turned sharply, his eyes catching hers, and shook his head. She didn't ask again. Then we heard it. A soft voice, almost like singing. It echoed between the trees, smooth and low, weaving through the branches until it felt like the forest itself was speaking. I froze, unsure if it came from ahead or behind. Mark whispered that it was just the wind, but even he didn't sound convinced. The song grew clearer, words I couldn't understand but could almost feel in my bones. We reached a clearing where the ground dipped like a shallow bowl. In the center stood a woman, tall, her hair long and silver under the glow. She turned slowly, her face calm, her eyes fixed on me as though she had been expecting us. Emily gripped my arm, trembling. Adrian finally broke his silence, calling the woman by a name none of us recognized. His voice carried respect, but also caution. The woman stepped closer, her movements too smooth, too graceful. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. Her gaze locked on me, and I felt as if she saw every thought I had ever tried to hide. She spoke softly, telling us that we did not belong here, that the path had chosen us, but the end was uncertain. Her words wrapped around me like vines, pulling tighter until I could hardly breathe. Mark stepped forward, demanding to know how we could leave. She looked at him with pity, as if his question was foolish. Then her eyes returned to me. She lifted her hand, and for a moment the air shimmered, revealing glimpses of another place. I saw a city, lights flickering, streets wet with rain. I wanted to run toward it, but my body wouldn't move. Adrian placed himself between us and the woman. His shoulders stiffened, his voice firm, telling her we weren't ready. Her expression changed, colder now, almost disappointed. The glow from the trees dimmed, as though the forest reacted to her mood. Emily buried her face against my shoulder, whispering that she wanted to go home. I couldn't answer her. I wanted the same, but I no longer knew what home meant. The woman turned away, fading into the shimmer until only the faint song remained. The clearing grew darker, the air heavier. Adrian exhaled, finally showing the strain he carried. He told us the forest would not let us leave until it decided what role we played. His words chilled me more than the woman's. At least she offered a glimpse of escape. Adrian spoke only of waiting. We left the clearing, walking deeper. My legs felt heavy, my mind clouded, but I couldn't stop. Each step echoed louder, and I realized the heartbeat sound hadn't faded. It had grown stronger. Emily still held my hand, her grip desperate. Mark walked ahead, muttering plans that made no sense. Adrian moved silently, but I caught him glancing back at me, his eyes unreadable. When we reached the edge of another path, I stopped and turned. The trees behind us shifted, closing the way we had come. It was gone, sealed as if it never existed. The forest had swallowed it whole. I wanted to scream, but I swallowed the sound. Instead, I kept walking, because whatever waited ahead was the only choice we had left. I never thought I'd miss the noise of traffic until silence pressed in on me like this. In the city, I used to complain about horns and chatter, but here, the absence of sound carried weight. Every step seemed louder than it should have been, crunching against soil that felt far too soft. Emily clung to my sleeve as if I was the only anchor she had left. Mark walked ahead, restless, his shoulders tense. Adrian kept close, but not too close, his expression unreadable, his eyes scanning every shadow. The forest changed as we moved. Trees grew taller, their trunks bending inward as though forming an endless archway. A pale glow spread across the bark, pulsing like veins beneath skin. My breath caught when I realized the rhythm matched my heartbeat. I told myself it was coincidence, but my chest tightened all the same. Emily whispered something about hearing her name in the wind. I wanted to tell her it was her imagination, but I wasn't sure anymore. The air felt alive. We came to a ridge where the ground dipped into darkness. Below, faint lights swirled like lanterns floating on water. They shimmered, twisting in shapes that resembled faces. Mark leaned forward, curious, but Adrian's arm shot out, blocking him. His voice was calm yet sharp, warning us not to step closer. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Faces in the air, trees that glowed, none of this belonged in reason. Yet here we were, standing in a world that bent every rule I thought I knew. As we turned away, I noticed something. The path behind us was gone. The trees had shifted, sealing off the way like curtains drawn shut. My stomach dropped. Mark swore under his breath, spinning in circles, searching for a way back. Emily's grip on me tightened until her nails pressed through the fabric. Adrian stayed silent, but the set of his jaw revealed more than words. He had expected this. That realization rattled me more than anything else. We pressed on. The deeper we went, the more distorted everything became. Time lost shape. Sometimes it felt like minutes, other times hours, but the sky never shifted. A faint gray hung above, neither day nor night. My thoughts drifted to simple things. Coffee in the morning, the buzz of my phone, streetlights flickering after rain. Each memory felt like a lifeline I was afraid to lose. Emily murmured about her family, her voice trembling. Mark said nothing, though I caught the flicker of longing in his eyes. Then, out of the shadows, we saw her again. The silver-haired woman, standing where no path should have led. She looked the same, yet her presence felt heavier. Her gaze slid across each of us before settling on me. I wanted to look away but couldn't. Her eyes weren't cruel, yet they held something endless, something too vast for me to comprehend. She lifted a hand, and the glow in the trees dimmed. The air grew still, pressing down on us. Adrian stepped forward, shielding us. His voice carried a quiet authority, asking what she wanted. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Her words floated out, low and measured, telling us that the forest was not meant to keep us safe, but to test what we carried inside. I didn't understand, yet a part of me sensed she wasn't lying. Mark scoffed, muttering that riddles wouldn't get us home. The woman's gaze flickered toward him, not with anger, but with something close to pity. Emily whispered that she couldn't take it anymore, that she wanted to wake up from whatever this was. My own thoughts weren't far from hers. Yet when the woman reached toward Emily, I stepped between them without thinking. My body shook, but my voice came out steady, asking her to leave Emily alone. For a moment, silence hung. Then slowly she lowered her hand. A faint curve touched, her lips not quite a smile, not quite disdain. She turned and dissolved into the haze, leaving us in darkness once again. The moment she vanished, the ground beneath us shifted. Roots crawled upward, weaving into a path that stretched farther into the unknown. Adrian exhaled, a sound more weary than relieved. He said the forest had accepted our defiance, though it wasn't over. His tone made it clear he wasn't sure what came next. Mark muttered that he didn't trust Adrian, that maybe he was part of whatever was happening. I wanted to disagree, but doubts had already taken root. We walked the new path in silence. Emily's steps dragged, her strength thinning, but she refused to let go of my arm. Mark kept throwing glances at Adrian, as though expecting betrayal. I stayed caught between them, trying to hold myself together while questions tore at my mind. Who was the woman? Why did she know me? And why did I feel deep down that leaving this place wouldn't mean escape? The forest swallowed the sound of our footsteps, leaving only the faint echo of that song drifting just out of reach. I didn't know if it came from the woman, the trees, or something else entirely. All I knew was that it followed us, threading through the air, pulling us farther into the heart of a world that wasn't ours. I woke to the sound of water dripping somewhere nearby, steady and hollow, like it came from deep inside the earth. My throat was dry, and for a moment I wondered if I had been dreaming. The others were scattered around me, restless in their sleep. Mark leaned against a tree, arms crossed but eyes open, as if guarding the path. Emily curled close to the roots, her breathing uneven. Adrian sat apart, gaze locked on the shadows ahead. None of it felt normal, and yet this had become our reality. When I tried to stand, the ground felt unsteady, almost alive, shifting under my weight. The trees swayed, though there was no wind, their branches curling toward us like they were listening. I told myself it was exhaustion, nothing more, but the lie barely convinced me. Adrian finally turned, his expression calm but sharp, and said we couldn't stay here longer. He spoke as though he knew what waited for us if we lingered. Mark muttered something under his breath, frustration thick in his tone, but he rose to follow anyway. The path ahead wasn't really a path, more like the forest had peeled itself open, just wide enough for us to pass. We walked in silence, each footstep sounding far too loud. Emily clung to me, her fingers trembling against my arm. I could feel her fear pressing through the skin, and I wished I could tell her I wasn't scared, but that would have been a lie. My own chest felt tight, like the air here was watching, waiting for us to make a mistake. Not long after, we reached a clearing. It was circular, almost perfect, the grass glowing faintly as though lit from beneath. In the center stood a figure. Not the silver-haired woman this time, but someone younger, her hair long and dark, her posture still as stone. She didn't move when we entered. Her eyes lifted slowly, and when they met mine, I felt my stomach turn. It wasn't anger or kindness in her gaze, but something in between, like she was measuring me. Mark took a step forward before Adrian stopped him with nothing more than a glance. The air grew thicker, heavy enough that my lungs ached. Emily whispered that she couldn't hear the forest anymore, and I realized she was right. The steady hum, the soft movement that had surrounded us since we arrived, was gone. All that remained was silence, and the silence was worse. The girl in the clearing tilted her head slightly, and the grass around her rippled though she hadn't touched it. I wanted to ask her who she was, but the words stuck in my throat. It was Adrian who finally spoke, his voice low, asking what she wanted with us. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she raised her hand, and the glow in the ground pulsed brighter. Shapes flickered beneath the grass, shifting like shadows of people walking beneath the surface. My heart pounded as I realized they were moving in rhythm with us. Every tilt of my head mirrored faintly in the light below. Emily gasped, clutching her chest, and I pulled her closer. Mark's fists tightened, his face hard with suspicion, but he didn't move. The girl's voice finally slipped into the air, soft and distant, saying that this place was not bound by time, that we were not the first to walk here. Her eyes flicked toward me as though she wanted me to understand something more. I couldn't. My thoughts twisted, colliding with fear and curiosity, and I hated that part of me wanted to know more, even as every instinct screamed to run. The silence broke with a sound, branches cracking above us. We all looked up at once. Figures emerged from the treetops, not climbing down, but gliding, their outlines blurred as though woven from mist. They circled the clearing, drifting silently, and the air grew colder. Emily buried her face against my arm. Mark finally snapped, his voice rising, demanding answers from Adrian, accusing him of leading us here. For a second I thought Adrian might lash back, but he didn't. He just watched the mist figures, jaw clenched tight. The girl lowered her hand, and the shadows beneath the grass faded. The figures in the trees lingered, watching. She told us in that same soft tone that the way forward required something of us, a choice. Her eyes lingered on me again, and I hated the weight of that focus. My mouth was dry, my hands shaking, but I forced myself to ask what she meant. She didn't reply. Instead, she turned and walked toward the far edge of the clearing. The trees bent aside for her, closing again once she passed through. We were left in silence, broken only by the faint sound of Emily's uneven breathing. Mark cursed under his breath and started pacing,